In this video, I want to share with you my story about how I learned Norwegian by myself. It was a long time ago, over 10 years ago, and I didn't live in Norway. I lived in Russia. And why do I want to share this with you? Well, it's not about me. It's not about how good or flink Olga how good I am. But it's actually in order to inspire you and empower you, and yeah, so that you take control over your learning process. Because truth be said, we always learn the language by ourselves. Even if we sit in a classroom with other students, even if we have a private teacher, it's you who are learning, right? So it's always this process that you go through by yourself. But it is also about the fact that no matter where you live, you don't have to live in Norway in order to learn Norwegian. When I came to Norway in 2013, I already had passed Bergenstesten, so I got level C1 in Norwegian. So, a little bit about my story. Back in the days, in 2011, 2012, I lived in Moscow and I used to work as a Russian teacher. And some of my clients, they were Norwegian companies, and there was some people from the Norwegian embassy, some people from the Seafood Council that had their office in Moscow back in the days, right? So I was lucky enough that I got to meet some Norwegian people in Moscow, and at that time I spoke English and German. So for me, listening to Norwegian people speak to each other, it sounded a little bit understandable, but it also sounded quite fun. So just listening to it, I felt like, that's a fun language. And then one beautiful day, I had a conversation with one of my students, and he challenged me. He said, Olga, if you learn Norwegian, well, then I will take you shopping. Well, that's good enough motivation for me. I was 22 years old, so you can understand. Right. So what I did the logical thing. I went to a bookstore to find a book, a grammar book for Norwegian language. And the only book I found at the store, it was a university grammar book for those students who studied Norwegian language and culture. And it was a very black and white book. It was very small letters, and I loved it. So I bought the book, and it was full of very detailed, probably sometimes too academic explanations, but it explained everything. It started with a thorough introduction to phonetics, then it went through grammar, and it had some dialogues, it had audio files, it had exercises, it had grammar drills, it had keys to the exercises. So it was the kind of perfect book that a student could take, and if you like to read, if you pay attention, then it was absolutely fantastic. So the only thing I needed was to dedicate my attention and time. And that was exactly what I did. So I spent about a month with that book. It was a pretty big one. I think it took me from the first Hey to pretty much level B1. But the downside with that book was that it was written quite a long time ago, and maybe some of the dialogues and quite a lot of the texts, they were outdated, and it also used a very sort of polished language. People don't speak like that. It was very academic, it was very correct, but modern Norwegian people really don't speak like that. So when I tried to speak to my Norwegian friends, they were like smiling a little bit at me, like, okay, Olga, you learned something, you understood something, but it's still a bit funny. But I didn't give up. I finished that book, and I thought, like, okay, well, now I really want to learn how real Norwegians speak, how modern Norwegians speak. And I spoke to my friends, and they helped me, and they ordered books for me from Norway. And those are the books that still exist. They are very much updated by now, but I still think they are probably the best books to learn Norwegian. They are På vei, Stein på stein, and Her på berget. Yeah, På vei, this is the basic book. It takes you through level A1 and A2. Stein på stein is level B1, and Her på berget is level B2. And I got the books, I got the audio files, I got the exercise books, pretty much everything that I needed. The thing about these books, they are not designed for independent learning. So you're supposed to be in a classroom, you're supposed to be with a teacher, somebody who explains grammar to you. But since I already had read a grammar book, that was not a problem. So I took these books and I just really enjoyed them. So I listened to the dialogues, I read them aloud. I was writing the exercises, I was listening to the audio files, to different dialects, to much more modern language than was presented in the previous book. So I really had a lot of fun with these books, and they're all colorful. There was pictures, there was cultural notes, and it was just really, really great fun. And I had those books with me everywhere I went. Like every time I would have a half an hour break, I would sit in a cafe, have my coffee before my next lesson or a meeting where I would translate. I would just sit and read these books. So, and I would talk to myself quite a lot since I didn't have many people to practice Norwegian with. So I would talk to myself and I would imagine some situations where I would use it, and it was a lot of drama and it was a lot of fun. It's always happening in my head. So there were these 3 books that I spent maybe another 2 or 3 months studying. And then I started to speak Norwegian to my Norwegian friends at a party with just a little bit of alcohol, just to get rid of the language barrier. And then I thought, well, this is fun, but I really like to finish my projects. So, and for me to finish a project when it comes to learning a language is to take a language test. So what I did, I Googled test i norsk. And the first thing I found was Bergenstesten. And again, I had never been to Norway before. I didn't know much, or I didn't know as much as I should have known about Norwegian dialects, or basically that they speak so differently in different parts of the country. But I thought, okay, well, Bergenstesten, that sounds fun. So I signed up, and I signed up to take Bergenstesten in Bergen because that just sounded logical to me. And so and I still had 6 months before that test. And I read a little bit about it. I realized, like, oh my God, I actually signed up for level B2 C1. It was a high level test. So I said, well, that's okay. And I shared that with my friends, and they were so kind. They gave me a lot of books. They gave me a lot of audio books. They recommended me movies, series that I could watch in Norwegian. I got links to Norwegian radio. And so what I did for about 6 months, I created this artificial Norwegian environment for myself. Everything that I did in Norwegian. Like if I would, as usual, clean the house and listen to the radio, well, then it would be Norwegian radio. If, as usual, in the evening, I would sit and read a magazine or a book, that would be Norwegian book from now on. Watching a movie would definitely be a Norwegian movie. So it was like a very concentrated half a year when I did literally everything in Norwegian. And people thought that I was weird. I understand that, but it really, really worked, because when in March 2012, I came to Bergen to take the first part of the test. It's the biggest part. It's about writing and listening. So it just went well. So I got level C1 immediately, got bestått. And then 2 months later, I came back to take the oral part of the test. And at that one, I only got bestått at the moment. So it was level B2. So that was fun. That was my story. So I did not use any apps to learn Norwegian. I did not use any YouTube. I think I tried, but I don't think it was so many materials on YouTube for Norwegian back in the days. Now you are so lucky. You have so much more than I had, and you can just go and Google. You find so many good authors here on YouTube who are explaining everything about every aspect of grammar or expressions, and you can listen to so many different dialects. You can go on NRK and you can find so many movies and series in Norwegian with subtitles. You can watch them in your own pace. You can do it. You have Duolingo, which is absolutely for free and definitely a lot of fun to use. But I always emphasize that it cannot be the main tool for you to learn Norwegian. So you should have a thorough understanding, a thorough structure in your head. So you should know exactly what you are doing. Yeah, so I will stop talking here. And my point is, if you're lucky enough, if you go to some Norwegian courses or you have a private teacher, great, really, really great. But it is always you who are learning. So take control. Decide how you will learn. So if you are in a classroom and you learn Norwegian with other people, I would say that it's only 15 to 20% of your result, what you receive in the classroom. So it's 80% always what you do, how you work with the language in your own time. So find the time. So time is the key factor. And find something that really attracts you about learning the language. Because the way I learn, like, I am fascinated by grammar. I love those verbs, nouns, the structures, the inversions. So much fun for me. I understand that most people don't think that way, but find something that you really like about it and stick to it. So build the habit about this core element that you really, really love. Find your motivation. If you are lucky enough, find a friend that you can practice the language with. So really, best of luck in learning. You can do it. Just take control over it.